Hey, it's Joe West from the West Barn with
Mike Shimshack.
Today we've got Gena Johnson, ACM nominated this year for Recording Engineer of the Year. The first woman to ever be nominated for that. So congratulations. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Gena has worked with John Prine and Chris Stapleton, Jason Isbell, Casey Musgraves, Randy Rogers Band, Brandi Carlile. She worked on the Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga Star is Born recording, Oak Ridge Boys, Zach Brown, Hunter Hayes, Ben Folds, Lee Bryce, many, many more. And we are so proud to have her on the show and excited to have a woman. We've been looking for more and more women to get on the show. We reached out to Sylvia Massey and tried to get her on. We had Kelly King, who's a great friend of mine. I don't know if you know Kelly. She's a publisher in town, an A&R person. But it's so great to have a woman killing it in the music business. So congratulations. That's not an uneasy. That's got to be a difficult pathway to take. So you've arrived, and congratulations. I wanted to ask you about your arrival in Nashville and sort of how you sort of found your own spot here. I know you worked at 1979 as an intern and sort of made your way over to Studio A. So why don't you tell us a little bit about getting to Nashville and how you found that process?
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. And what an honor it is to be nominated as ACM Engineer of the Year among so many amazing engineers. I've looked up to those guys and worked with those people. And I mean, Vance Powell's a mentor of mine. So being next to him in line there is huge to me. Nashville feels so much like home. I'm from Minnesota originally. And so when I was looking for where to go, you kind of look at, okay, Nashville, New York, LA, what fits. And I came down here before I graduated college and I checked it out and interviewed at Welcome to 1979 Studios. And I then got offered an internship position there where it was a 3-month internship and I started teching tape machines and old MCI consoles and got really good at soldering and doing that sort of thing. And also I got the opportunity to sit in on a lot of really cool sessions. We would do direct to 2-track. And then later on, when I was an assistant there, they started doing the mastering process. And so we would experiment with live to lathe, as they'd call it. And that was a really cool experience. And then through there, I would take odd jobs. I worked at an AES convention for a weekend, and that's where I met Michael Wagner. I don't know if you know who that is, but if you don't, you should. Producer, engineer Michael Wagner. He's amazing. He's one of my biggest cheerleaders and huge mentor to me. He taught me so much. And I got to go and work with him as an assistant and then turn to his engineer as he was doing his productions. And, I feel like I was pretty green going into it with, a guy that has so much experience. And he really took the time and helped me. And so I try to put that into my career now. If I'm mentoring people, I have a female assistant. I mentor a female audio major from Belmont who's a junior. And it's just really exciting when people are excited about it, especially women, because I can kind of see myself in that. And it makes me want to create a safe and cool environment for them where they feel like it's an open place where they can learn. There it goes. Danielle Breezy. So anyways, so after that, I was
Let me stop you there.
a freelance assistant sort of at the same time as well. Yeah.
I have a question for you. Tell us a little bit about that process of, okay, come to town, become a general assistant, not like sitting in on the sessions assistant, right? So there's no money here, right? It's like you show up, you don't get paid, or do you get paid? What is the role of a general assistant?
Intern is usually unpaid, and usually it's for school credit. And I worked there for 3 months unpaid. I just took out a loan basically to live, and I spent every waking minute there that I could, instead of getting a job and only being there sometimes, because I really wanted to make it work and I wanted to absorb as much as I possibly could.
So people that move to Nashville could expect that, to like, okay, you get in a situation where you're just sort of part of the studio ecosystem, where it's like maybe you're going to grab lunch for people, maybe you're cleaning up the control room, maybe you're helping solder some mic cables, right? Is that what that looks like?
Yes, absolutely. Think of it as any other job. You have a sort of a 90-day, period where they're testing you out, where they're saying, okay, what can this person do? Can they do the basics? Can they make coffee and make sure it doesn't burn? Can they, make sure that toilets are clean? Even though, yes, that has nothing to do with audio. However, it kind of does in a way. Customer service. Right. I have a home studio now, and I got to make sure all that stuff is done.
And if you care enough to make sure the coffee is not burnt, well, then you care enough to make sure that all the mic cables are in the right positions and mics are in the right placement, right? This isn't abuse. A lot of people look at that like they're too good for it. I know we have a lot of latency on this call, so it's going to be like, it feels like we're playing table tennis here. Sorry, but that's just part of the Zoom,
I know.
The lottery at Zoom. So tell us, okay, so after 3, did you use this for course credit, or did you just did that on your own, the internship?
I did it on my own, I believe. Maybe it was through, I don't really remember. I had already graduated, and I think we turned it in somehow. So it was, for them, it worked out and they weren't breaking out any rules or anything. But I was just excited to be in a studio. I was just excited to put my hands on some things. And the cool thing that they did, and different studios did as well, but after 3 months, you're doing all of these odd jobs that you don't necessarily feel are maybe necessarily important or whatever. I mean, you walk into 79, that floor, that gold floor there, I painted that and the ceiling and the lathe room, and built baffles for the lathe room. My fingerprint is on that place, which is kind of cool to look back at now.
Right.
But after the 3 months, showing that I could do the basic tasks and get them done in a timely manner and an efficient manner, all of a sudden they put an old tape up on a tape machine and laid it out on the console and said, okay, have fun. Just mix. Right. Just, route some stuff, patch in outboard gear, just do your thing and have fun. And that to me was huge, because all of a sudden, okay, it was worth it.
Right. And you earned it, right? It's like that Mr. Miyagi thing where it's like you start to realize what the wax on and wax off. You didn't realize all these muscles from making ISO booths and painting ceilings. It's like you earned the right to be at the next level. So let's say after the 3 months, you start to become an assistant, right? And tell us ideally what I'm trying to do here is, if somebody were considering moving to Nashville, you're nominated for ACM Recording Engineer of the Year. And in 2012, I think it was, you moved, right? Here in 2012.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to give them a timeline of what it takes to get nominated for ACM Recording Engineer of the Year, what that looks like. And it's like, some people would say, I'm not going to dirty my hands. I didn't come here to build gobos. I didn't come here to paint ceilings, right? And they're out the door, because they don't have the other things that you can tell if a person is made to do this by what their spirit and how they want to engage in participating in what is the best thing for the session, for the studio. It shows dedication, deferred gratification. So we're trying to show, like, hey, what if there's somebody that is in Minnesota right now, like you came from Minnesota, and they're saying, what if I moved to Nashville? And on top of this, you're a woman. So people aren't expecting you to succeed at this. So there's another barrier for you, right? So it's like, I want to give them like a pathway. So after your 3 months, you get to become what they would normally call an assistant that would sit in on sessions now. Now you're assisting the engineer. So tell us what that looks like and what the process was and how you scaled into actually getting into the seat and maybe punching in some vocals.
I really do think that starting off, it's important to realize that you're probably the least knowledgeable person in the room. You probably have no idea what you're doing, or you think you do, and then you're already shooting yourself in the foot. So you come there with basic audio knowledge from college, right? However, not a lot of that is practical application. So saying you're proficient at something before any actually world experience in the studio is sort of hard for an employer to look at and be like, okay, unless you do have studio experience. So one of the things that really helped me was being a sort of silent helper in the corner where nobody heard me, but things were always done. And I was observing. And I think you can learn a lot from just listening and observing. And then after a couple of years of that sort of thing, which maybe it's shorter for some people or longer for some people, but Nashville is not a business card town. Nashville is a show up, do your job, and you might get a call. Maybe even 2 years later or 3 years later, somebody's going to think, who was that helpful person at 79 or wherever it was? She was awesome, or he was awesome. And they're going to look you up and they're going to find you and they're going to call you and ask you if you're available for a session. And I know that sounds crazy, but that's exactly how it happens. And I've had to explain that to a lot of interns before. I had an intern once that had a business card made up it was actually at RCA. It was an intern at RCA. And one of his favorite engineers was there, producers, and we're helping him load his gear out after a couple day session. And right before I close the door, he tries to run outside and hands him this business card. He goes, "Hey, if you're ever looking for a pocket drummer, call me." And I was mortified for him. Mortified.
Right.
Because I thought, oh man, that is not the way to go about it. You are here as an audio intern. And I really do think just focusing on what's your role? What are you hired to be there for? As an engineer, I'm hired for my ears to listen. My opinion is how it sounds. If it is incorrect, not aligned with the producer will let me know. But all of it has to be an open communication and in a safe place. But if I come in with some sort of big ego, all of a sudden the producer isn't able to be open and creative. And really, the assistant has to help the engineer
right
with all of
Great
that
point.
stuff. So it's at every level, it kind of is just building different comfort zones for people. Okay, the engineer wants coffee. You see their coffee cup is low. Hey, bring them coffee and make sure you know how they want to take it. And that's not sort of like, you lowly assistant. I'll get the assistant coffee. It doesn't matter to me. It's just, we're a family. How can we make this happen well and professional? At the end of the day, it's about the artist customer service and not having the technical or ego stuff get in the way.
That's incredible. People don't realize that. Incredible point. You have to make sure that there are no big breaks. That's when I was a kid, I always felt like I can't wait till I get my big break and I go through the door and then the rest of my life is on the other side of this door. What you're saying is be indispensable. The assistant needs to make the engineer's job totally easy and make him look like a rock star, like he's a genius. Then the engineer needs to make the producer's life so easy that they're a genius. And the producer needs to make the artist's life so easy that they're a genius. This is an ecosystem that if we all agree and we're all on the same page, then you end up with some extraordinary results. But it's never those kids that are handing out business cards to people. They don't get it. They need to start to, this is what this podcast is for. Let people have the ability to see how you were able to navigate those waters, what was important and what got you from intern to getting your hands on faders, to then sitting in on sessions, making an engineer's life easy. And then the next thing you know, the engineer's saying, "Hey, I'm going to run out. I got to make a phone call. Punch these vocals for me." And they trust you because you've made coffee right. You've painted ceilings right. You've showed up every day for 12 hours a day, sometimes 20 hours a day. And they know now that this person is part of, you're not going to try to steal their job. You want to help them and make them. And next thing you know, you're that guy's person. And then you're doing more and more until they're not touching faders anymore. This is how the world of being a successful engineer works. And then you inevitably become the producer, right? I mean, it's just the natural transitions of things.
Exactly.
That's what people need to know. People want that out of each other.
You just got to create value. That's every step of the way. You got to create value. That's it.
That's the secret of this. If people, if they didn't have the technical prowess, I'll teach someone the technical prowess. I don't care what school you went to. If you come in, I realize it's going to be really tough for you to get going. You know, it's like, I'll teach you that stuff. I can't teach someone not to go up and heckle an artist. I can't teach them not to follow them out to their van afterwards and try to get a gig from them. I can't teach them that. If they come in with that, they're just going to work their way out. But I'll go to the end of the earth to show somebody how to get a great drum sound and make a session go like this so that the record's working. I'll teach them that if they've got the heart for it. That's the true secret. Put that in someone, they're going to succeed. So we get to the point now where you're now stopping to be, let's say you're kind of through that assistant engineer process. How did you transition from assistant engineer to actually being the person that's getting the phone call to come in and engineer the day? What was that like? Do you remember the first time? Do you remember what that experience was sort of, how did that become?
I always believed not putting all your eggs in one basket, just because the industry is you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if somebody's going to come in and take your job or what's going to happen. So during the time I was an assistant, I was also engineering, probably, and doing my own projects. A lot of times doing them for free and just getting experience doing records for nothing. And then all of a sudden you have this transition where you do know what you're doing, and then people are hiring you, maybe more of a lower budget. But then, like you said, you just work your way up and continue to learn from all of these engineers you're working with and all of these producers, and everybody does it differently. So all of a sudden you're a smorgasbord of all of these amazing, talented engineers that you worked with. And you can kind of take and pick, and you get in different situations. But this wasn't the first time, but it was a time that I really felt like I had confidence put on me to do something completely by myself. And it was when Ben Folds was at RCA. This is before the Dave Cobb days at RCA. And he called me in the middle of the afternoon, and Ben's the kind of guy that starts work around 3 or 4 in the afternoon and goes till like 3 or 4 in the morning. So when Ben was in town, we knew to be available, and I loved working with him. He's one of the most creative guys ever. You chase him around with a microphone because he has so many ideas. He's just brilliant. And he calls me in the afternoon. He goes, "Hey, what are you doing today?" And I was like, "Well, I'm just, hanging out at home. And, what's up?" He goes, "Do you want to go and record something?" I said, "Sure." He said, "Okay, cool. I have this Roger Miller song that I need to record, and we'll do it together. I want you to engineer it." And so we went in, and I set up the microphones before I came in, had everything ready to go. And then he goes, we finished the recording. He goes, "Okay, cool. I'm going to walk to Starbucks and get us a coffee, comp the vocal while I'm gone." Okay. So then I do pressure. So, and he comes back. Exactly. He comes back and we listen to it together, and he goes, "Yeah, that makes sense why you picked this. I'm going to tell you why I would pick this instead. And this is totally just my ears and the way that I hear my voice." But then there were some things that I picked in his vocal comp that he actually wouldn't have picked and he preferred better. And then he goes, "Okay, cool. So, spend a little time and mix it." I mixed it. He came in, and I think I patched in a Pultec EQP1A on his vocal, and he closed his eyes and he just started like spinning knobs. I was like, whoa, this is super cool. It's really how it makes you feel and how you hear things. And so then we tried printing the mix through, 2 LA2As. Definitely were not calibrated, but it was and different things he had. He had these ear compressors, and we came up with something really beautiful. And then I got a call probably a month later to fly to Chicago and to record a full song for his record So There that came out in 2016. And he was on tour with this sextet of classical musicians and called Why Music. And he's like, yeah, so I want to do this song called Phone in a Pool that I wrote about, he was in LA and he threw his phone in the pool or something, whatever. And I was like, sweet. And I was like, how am I going to recall what we did at RCA in Chicago at this studio? So I called Ralph, who was the rental guy at Blackbird at the time. I was like, okay, I need a bunch of tube mics. I need some ribbon mics. And I packed my backpack full of microphones, and going from Nashville to Chicago was fine. And, but coming back was an issue because it was looked like I had a bunch of bombs in my backpack with the power supplies and everything. But I get there, and the studio, there were things that were not working as well as you'd want them to. And the owner was awesome, and he's a great producer, and we had a great time. But I was having my tech experience, and I just dove in and I just started making some stuff work. And all of a sudden I had this thing. I was like, I can do anything. I know that I can go to a room randomly in the middle of nowhere and I can make it work. And that's when I had that feeling of, obviously it was excitement, but also confidence in myself. And I think it was also from, working at House of Blues and Blackbird and the Castle and all these different places with different patch bays and different microphones and tape machines and all this, and just having to make it work.
And isn't that great? Because at that moment, the last 6 years just paid off. That's a really cool thing to know about yourself. It's like, I'm going to do something now that I'm going to feel good about 6 years from now. And it takes a special kind of person to do that. So that's a really good payoff when you look back and say, man, there's a lot of work, a lot of push-ups, and I didn't like it while I was doing it. But look at me now. I can do this. I can do anything. Like what you said, I can do anything.
Yeah. And
Incredible.
The best part about this job, and this is something that Michael Wagner told me early on, and I took it in and I soaked it in. He goes, the best part about this job is you learn every single day. Mm-hmm. If you're open to it, you get to learn something every single day. And then, as Roy Thomas Baker said, who is one of his mentors, was anything worth doing is worth overdoing. So just go for it. Right? Just
That's
go
a great
for
one.
it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing quote.
It's a beautiful quote. Yeah. I was just talking to a friend of mine yesterday at the studio, and he was telling me about an experience he had in a studio with an engineer. He had brought in a high profile session dude that everybody knows. And it was just, this engineer was a problem. And I just thought to myself, the engineer should never be the problem. They should always be the solution. Yes. And it was 100% attitude. It was just somebody who had some ego issues, and they were getting in their own way. And the point is to get out of the way, to clear the way, right? For these people to be great. And you have to realize selfishly that by them being great, you can be great, because then the sounds are better, the performances are better, and you're now sitting at a console mixing it, and you just enjoy because all the great things. But you need to get out of the way to do that sometimes.
I saw one of
that is so go ahead.
Oh, sorry. So I saw one of your other interviews where you were talking about how in advance the tea somebody likes, or there's a bouquet of flowers waiting for somebody. I thought that was so brilliant in the sense that it's like they're instantly comfortable, right? And that's all we're trying to do is capture great performances, and in order to do that, they have to be comfortable.
Yeah.
I just thought that was I don't know that I'd ever heard of anybody.
I think of it as well, thank you. I really think of it as it's my house. I mean, in this situation, before COVID, I was having, I had this studio. I bought this house in 2017. We put the studio in 2018, and I was thinking, okay, mix and overdub place. That's it. And then it turned in, and then COVID, and all of a sudden it had to be more than that. But it's been awesome. And I mean, the first person I recorded here was John Prine.
Nice.
I mean, are you kidding me?
It's incredible.
And he sat, on the couch. He goes, Gena, I love your little studio. It's just, everything's here. I don't have to wear headphones.
Yep.
I can hear everything. I can see. And it was just easy, and that's what I want people to feel. I want them to feel like they're at home. They can take their shoes off if they want.
Yeah.
And we always have snacks and, and fun stuff, because it's, as much as it's about the music, which it is, that's the ultimate. It's also an experience, and the experience making the music, like you're saying, it needs to be amazing. We don't have to roll out the red carpet and like have, suit every day and all this stuff, but the little things matter. And to me, in my life in general, it's always been the little things are the big things.
Let me tell you my favorite Mike Shimshack story and why he's a god among men.
Oh, no.
Me and Mike had written with this girl group, management company called us, and we wrote with these girls, and inevitably, people either care about your songs or they don't. Evidently, everyone loved this song that me and Mike had written with this girl group, and we cut it, and it came out as a really good demo. And I remember sitting in the management office, and it was just good enough that people that were outside of the creative circle, like the managers, right?
I swear I'm a nice guy too, by the way.
It was just good enough that those people felt like they wanted to get their fingerprint on it. So they started giving us all this notes. Me and Mike are sitting in their office on Music Row, and Mike's like, well, yo, stop right there. We're sitting there, and I was feeling kind of demoralized by this conversation. I was feeling like, hey, I thought we did something really great here, and these guys are trying to tell us what they want us to change about it. And Mike proceeds to stop these guys in the middle of their role and says, your job is to make us feel like superheroes, be able to jump over buildings there's nothing we can't do. The second you guys stop doing that, I don't want to even do anything. He's like, the second that you make me feel like a mortal, you're not going to get extraordinary results from me. He dressed both of these managers down. Like, these are like two pro managers. Like, I'd never seen it. It was like, but it's so true. As the producer, as the artist, as the engineer, as the assistant, if you make somebody feel like a superhero, they're going to give you an extraordinary outcome, or at least a shot at an extraordinary outcome. And it's more about the psychology of it. Make people feel great and give them the opportunity to be great. And I'll never forget that. He stopped them in the middle of their role, and he says, yo, you need to stop. And just like dressed them down. And I don't know if I was laughing out loud, but I was trying to compose myself the entire meeting. We got out of there and left. I don't even remember if we ever dealt with those people again.
Those guys were clowns, man.
But it was like, I was just like, I can't believe I got to be a part of that. It was like a Good Will Hunting scene.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, glad to have entertained you, Joe.
So good. So true. You got to make sure that you are part of the solution, and then you be great. It's like, hey, that's what it is too. This fellow that was my buddy was telling the story about this engineer getting in his own way. The reason why that engineer was doing that was because he was a one-trick pony. He was afraid that you were going to ask him to be a two-trick pony. And he's like, but I only know the one trick. And he didn't want to acknowledge that. So what does he do? He bows up rather than sitting behind Michael Wagner, Steve Marcantonio, you name it, Ben Fowler, all the guys in town. Rather than sitting behind them and saying, oh my God, I'm going to totally steal that and put my fingerprints all over it. I'm going to be great like that. I'm going to have that trick in my bag. Rather than do that, if you just shut off from that, you'll never have that solution. That's the difference between these people. That's what people need to know moving to town. They need to know that it's demoralizing. You have to be humble enough to keep on learning, keep on trying to be better, and then know whenever what you're doing is the right thing, and to say, hey, I'm in a polite way, say, I got this. You're going to be happy. Give me 5 minutes. So now you're at the point now where it's like, you're a big star. You're big shot. Right? How does that feel? I mean, it's like you walk into a room and people are like, ooh, they got Gena to do the record. It's like, how does that feel?
It's awesome. It's awesome. But, I don't really think of myself like that, because it's kind of just how things have gone. And I think staying true to yourself, and also it's so to put onto your last point, it's okay to not know everything.
Right.
I mean, you're constantly learning. I mean, it's okay. And I mean, I was working with a Blackbird intern the other day, or assistant. She's awesome. And she was like, I've never routed something like this before. Can you show me? And I said, absolutely. Thank you for asking, and she's going to know it now every single other time. And all of a sudden that opens up a whole new can of worms for her, because she's like, oh, I can now do this because I have this skill. But as far as walking into the room like that, I wouldn't have had, there's a reason that you stay in the room for sure. But I'm just so thankful for the people that have allowed me to be. I think about projects like this as, like you're saying, like that guy that ruined the session, that was engineer. It's like, this is the artist's investment. Mm-hmm. This is like to them, this is like important as buying a house, sort of, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe it's not that much money, but in some instances it really is. And you have to go at it as I'm sort of a servant in this way. I'm a customer service person, and I don't know. I always check my ego at the door. I love people, and I love working with people. I mean, it's awesome meeting you guys. It's great to be around people. I feel like my own needle internally moves after every single record, and I grow and I take from it, because I dig deep and I learn about that person, and I take the time to hear what their songs mean and what they want to put out in the world. So as far as that goes, I don't really know how to answer that question. I don't think that's necessarily, I mean, maybe a thing, but yeah.
Yeah, it's the perfect answer. Had you answered the other way, I mean, maybe you'd have a problem, but that's the way successful people answer that question. But, it's a little bit of tongue in cheek, but, it's another thing where you look back 6 years ago and said, I can do anything. I tell people all the time that it's part of the consequence of working hard and being passionate about something is the fact that you become incredibly competent at it. And I tell people, like, no one's going to tell you at 50 that you don't know how to tie your own shoes. Meanwhile, at 5 years old, it's an incredibly difficult task to master. Mm-hmm. But at 50, no one's going to tell you that. You're going to be like, I can tie the living shit out of my shoes. Mm-hmm. There's no way you're going to tell me it's wrong. It's a consequence of doing it for 50 years. And you're at the point in your career where you're starting to enjoy some of that, thankfully. And with this nomination, it's like, it's really been cast up onto the wall now. It's like memorialized. It's a big honor to be the first woman ever to be nominated in that category, which is too late, probably. Maybe, there's not a ton, so the numbers are tough, whenever you don't have as many women in the field. But I think it will inspire a whole new generation of people. You're talking about all these women that you're helping patch stuff and people you're seeing as interns. So the next great wave could be women engineers with a different sensibility that brings a whole new reality to what we hear and how we hear it. So I wanted to ask you, I don't want to keep you too long.
I hope so.
I wanted to ask you, like, okay, so now you're doing a Chris Stapleton record. Say you're recording. What's your level of anxiety? This guy's like been the biggest selling artist forever, the last couple of years, just dominating. You're on this record. There's a lot of eyeballs on this record. You're going to be setting up, let's say, for a tracking date with him. How much stress is on you the night before, the day before, the week before, knowing it's coming up? How long does it take you to get the room set up? And are you just like kind of not eating right? Are you stressed out? Or are you just totally chill?
I don't think I necessarily have anxiety. I just prep a lot. But with anybody, whether it's Stapleton, whether it's, Isabel, whether it's an independent artist that nobody knows yet, you have to come prepared. And if you're prepared, then you just have to trust yourself that you're in that room for a reason and you're going to do a killer job. And somebody like Stapleton, I just get excited because they're awesome to be around. I mean, they're super fun, awesome people. Him and Morgan and, Vance and Dave, we had so much fun. And it also is fun to see, tons of success happen. But at the end of the day, they're just people. They're just people. And they want to be treated like people with respect, and they want to make their art the best that it can be. And I have to be an advocate for that, and I have to show up and do my part. If I don't, I'll definitely hear about it. So there is pressure, but it's just professional.
When you have a tracking date booked, let's say, have you done full rhythm tracking for Chris?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I'm starting over. Yeah.
Okay, so let's say you're on that session where it's a big setup. Mm-hmm. Tell me how many hours before, let's say the downbeat's 10 a.m. on a Monday. Tell me how many hours it takes to get to 10 a.m. on Monday before you're ready to start that session. Like, what's your prep studio-wise?
If the studio's available, I prefer having the day before. Whether it takes me 2 hours, 4 hours, all day, I like to go in, and I'm also really particular. So I'll check lines. As an assistant, I would check lines 3 times over before the engineer would come to make sure there weren't any technical issues. And, click it with the cricket boxes and all this stuff. And then also, okay, is it a weird sound? And then if there was a weird sound, okay, plug in a 57. What's going on? And, making sure everything's good, but also making sure the studio vibe and atmosphere is good too. So, things need to be clean. Things need to look nice. And that is on everybody besides the artist. The artist should walk in and, whether it's the producer, engineer, assistant, intern, it's a total family thing. And it may lay on different people, but to me, I always want to have eyes on everything and make sure it's working and make sure my hands have been on it and I know that it's good to go, because I'm trying to give leeway to assistants more, which there's a guy, Louis, at Sound Emporium that I just adore, and he's great. And every time I go, he just remembers something that I did last time and puts it in our template and makes it happen, and, takes pictures and documents and emails me stuff. I'm like, you are a rock star, and he's going to be so successful. He already is by doing those things. And, there's people like that you just really want to work with, but it's rare that I don't go to a setup and, put my hands on things, and even as, the engineer or producer or whatever, because it's my job. It's my livelihood. I got to make sure it's good. I can't count on really anybody else 100%.
Here's what people may not know from out of town is that when you have a session booked for 10 a.m., you are recording at 10 a.m. It's not, hey, let me hear the kick drum. It's play the work tape at 10 a.m. and they are hitting drums at 10:06. So you have to make sure, and I tell my guys this at my studio. I say, hey, if we are working a date and the computer crashes or the power goes out, that's outside of our control. We could have never anticipated it. That's fine. But if I find out that during a record that somebody's talkback doesn't work, well, we need to take personal accountability to say everything that could have been done before the session. If that arises as a problem in the session, we have to really just own it. And we have to say, we have to be better next time. That was avoidable every second. And if you're doing a symphony, I did a symphony at Ocean Way, 55-piece symphony. One cable goes bad or is bad, it'll cost you in union fees for the symphony $600 to change the cable for them to run out and put a new cable, right? So it is really on us as technicians and artists to make sure that anything that could have been avoided prior, like you said, checking line checking things multiple times, making sure every single line, and then not just but talking into it so you hear the full frequency of, oh, there's no high end in this mic. There's something going on here. So
and setting the effects and reverbs and making sure things are at least, and getting a pre-mix in their headphones, taking pictures of what they had last time. Do they like more bass than drums? Do they like more vocal? Do they use effect at all? Listen to what they're listening to.
Yeah.
And take note of that. It's the details. And the symphony thing, we had the 83-piece in Studio A with Ben Folds, his 3-movement piano concerto, 83 pieces. That was nuts. We had to switch out the chairs last minute, And I mean, Casey Musgrave's pageant material string session that I was an assistant on, my car broke down on the way to the studio, legit in the middle of the road. I called the assistant. I'm like, yo, can you come and get me? And I had people helping me push my car off the road into a random parking lot. And if I wouldn't have set up and been prepared, and luckily that was still 2 hours before the session, but being prepared is number one. And anytime you don't triple check or double check, you're shooting your own self in the foot, because wouldn't you rather be prepared and ready than...
And you're a rare bird, because it's like that usually doesn't go with the right side creative brain. It's like, just show up and be an artist. So you seem to have, and I think I have a bit of this too, which is like, the details matter to me. I'm going to show up 2 hours early just because my car could break down and I know I drive a shitty car. So prepare for that, and then be the artist, have the creative part of the brain going. It sounds like you really have that plan. Before we let you go, what is next for you? Like, what is the next incarnation or development of your career?
That's a great question. I just keep going. And I'm currently making some music that I've never really heard before, which is really exciting. And my most recent and I think exciting collaboration has been with Ashley Monroe on her record Rose Gold that comes out at the end of this month. And our spirit and hearts and everything are so aligned, and our creative just feeling where we really dig in, and every single thing is in place, and every single thing has a meaning of why it's there. And I mixed the entire record and co-produced some of it with her, and it changed my life in ways where I know that sounds crazy to have a record change your life, but it makes you think differently about things. It opens different doors. Like I was saying, you can learn something new every single day. And I'm doing a lot of production with independent artists and some that are signed. And I love that aspect of it. And so I think more of that. And I love to write songs with artists. I love to arrange. I grew up singing, so I, love to put background vocals on tracks. And there's just so many avenues and things and fun things to do. I'm just excited for whatever comes next. I mean, yeah. I'm here to stay. Longevity is the plan.
Do you have something you would say to the 2012 version of Gena?
You're going to spend your entire 20s in a recording studio, and it's going to be worth it. And every single time that you don't feel seen, someday you're going to feel seen by your community and by the people around you. And it's all going to be worth it. And you're literally going to have the best job in the world, and you're going to love every single second of it.
That's fantastic.
It's awesome.
Hey, thank you for being on. Will you lift your laptop up and show people the world's fastest studio tour of what you did earlier for us?
Sure. I should have cleaned. Okay.
Literally the world's fastest studio tour.
Yes. And there's a lounge and all that stuff too, and a drum booth. But yeah, it's nice and cozy in here. And I don't know if you guys know about Cappy, but I kind of created a Cappy audio console here, so I can have all of my drums going through that. I'm super nerdy about that stuff.
That's great. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. When are the ACMs?
So the ACMs are the 18th, and then the ACM honors, which I was told because of COVID, it's going to be done at a later date. So it's going to be done in August. And I'm still kind of waiting for info on that. But I'm excited. Just,
Now, will you
more
get to
time
go?
to
The honors
to
is
wait
when do they give the awards out? On the 18th?
So the 18th is don't quote me on this, but I think the 18th is just for mainly artists. Just because of COVID, they're trying to separate it. Typically they go to Vegas, I guess, and then everybody goes there. But then there's this thing for studio personnel that's called the ACM Honors. And I believe that's when that happens. And that'll be in August. So
well, it's the world's longest drum roll. You got till August to, at least like live in the fact that like, hey, it's just an honor to be nominated. So congratulations. But you get to roll around in the anxiety and titillation of maybe next 6 months, you're going to be figuring out whether you're a winner.
There's no anxiety. There's no anxiety.
Good for you.
I'm excited to be involved. And honestly, it's like being nominated is huge.
Yeah. Well, good. A well-deserving nomination, great history, and a great, it's easy to, after talking to you for an hour, it's easy to tell why you're successful. I mean, it's just simple. I haven't heard one note, and I can tell you, I know why you're successful. It's like the other stuff is just gravy because I know you're great sonically. It's been proven by just, the amount of work you have. But congratulations on all that. Thanks for coming on the program.
Thanks for having me. So great.
Where can people find you?
Instagram, I guess.
Okay.
I'm working on a website right now, but I'm trying to get better at that. It's strange to think about having a website for yourself, but I know that is absolutely necessary. So that'll be happening. But Instagram, Gena Johnson 507. It's a, Minnesota area code, holding strong. But yeah. Find me. Oh yeah, you betcha. I mean, I have my coffee cup right here. Don't you know?
You betcha.
That's amazing.
Well, thanks for coming on and spending some time with us. Can't wait to meet you in person. That's it this week from the West Barn. We'll see you next time. Signing off.